Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children. And they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focus and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Nosotros estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno, y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children, and they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to our member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Center's program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se evocó creo con los de la OEA, y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno, y lo dieron todo que era mano de obra, y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children, and they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Este video fue producido con la ayuda financiera de la Unión Europea.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos, No podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the CTOUR, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect.
Virtual meeting of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development focused on science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship to promote the inclusion of women, girls, and populations of vulnerable situations. I extend a special welcome to member state representatives who are joining us virtually, as well as our specially invited guests. Ms. Shelley Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer, Space Foundation, United States. Ms. Savage, Assistant Professor and Director of Civic AI Lab, Northeastern University, Corey College of Computer Sciences, Boston, Massachusetts, and co-director of the UNAM Civic Innovation Lab in Mexico. Ms. Venice Zimmer, founder and president of Isel Bank, Brazil. Thank you for accepting our invitation to participate in today's deliberations. I'm advised by the Executive Secretary that we have the required quorum. I'll ask her to list the delegations in alphabetical order. The Secretariat will take note of other delegations as they join. Secretary Osborne, please read out the list of delegations present.
Thank you, Ambassador, and good afternoon, distinguished representatives. We have Bahamas, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United States, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Panama, Peru, República Dominicana, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Secretary Osborne. The required quorum is established and we can proceed with today's meeting. I now submit for consideration of CD by direction order of business approved. Item 2. We'll now begin a dialogue on the substantive topic for this meeting on science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship to promote the inclusion of women, girls, and populations in vulnerable situations. Clearly, this topic is very close to my heart. Innovation and entrepreneurship and inclusion of women. So colleagues, distinguished guests, it is well documented that the COVID-19 pandemic has deepened existing inequalities and widened technology and social gaps because of limited access of segments of society to the skills and tools necessary for participation in the digital economy. According to the Global Gender Gap Index of the World Economic Forum, the COVID-19 pandemic has increased the estimated time to close the gender gap in the world by 36 years. The WEF report indicates that the pandemic and ensuing economic activity restrictions and losses have impacted women more severely than men. Lower income households and disadvantaged communities have faced more financial, health, learning, social, and emotional hardship and uncertainties. Job losses have been particularly pronounced among minorities and working mothers. Across the developing world in particular, women have borne the brunt of the pandemic challenges in a disappropriate percentage. Initial projections from the International Labour Organization suggest 5% of all employed women lost their jobs. Furthermore, the over-reliance on women to double shift with duties to care for children increased job security and complicated maintaining work-life balance. And there's also the persistent gender gap in leadership roles, with women representing just 27% of all managerial level positions. The acceleration of the digital economy and e-commerce reinforce the need to develop skills and training in the innovation-driven sectors, as these sectors have the potential to create opportunities aligned with the jobs of the future and to contribute to greater economic autonomy, especially for women. Advancing concrete, actionable initiatives to improve access and leadership of women and communities with limited opportunities to follow STEM education, science, and innovation careers are needed to address some of the existing workforce inequalities affecting economic mobility and gender equality in the fields of science and technology in the Americas. Within the context of the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology, COMSIT, OAS member states have identified the importance of pursuing deliberate policies and programs to address existing gaps and inequalities affecting part of the population and communities. Today's dialogue will offer member states the opportunity to discuss actionable priorities to advance regional collaboration, to address the gender and inclusion gaps on innovation, science, technology, and entrepreneurship in the Americas. This session will explore results-driven interventions to improve access to science, innovation, and technology, to improve the economic and social situation of women and populations in vulnerable situations. Colleagues, as agreed on the methodology of the CD meetings, will first engage in a dialogue with our invited experts who will respond to specific questions from member states. Following this dialogue, member states will be invited to share their country's experiences, ideas for cooperation, and specific contributions related to the topic. It's now my pleasure to begin the conversation, and I'm pleased to give the floor to Ms. Shelley Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer of the Space Foundation of the United States. Ms. Brunswick, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Marks. It's an honor to be joining you, as well as Executive Secretary Osborne, distinguished guest, as well as other representatives from countries. I'm honored to share with you about the Space Foundation and our programs that we offer to help address many of the challenges that you're discussing today. I'm going to bring up my slides for you. All right. All right, maybe I'm not. I'll give that one more try.
Yeah, you have to, Ms. Brunswick, you have your presentation already open?
I did have it open. We'll give it one more try. It seems that that is just always how it goes, isn't it? There we go. We're going to try one more time. I apologize. Technology is wonderful when it works perfectly. Okay. Do you now see my slides?
Yes, we do.
Now,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay. There you go.
Now I will share that I cannot see you, so my goal will be to just cover the slides and then pause because I'd rather be open to dialogue. But at the Space Foundation, there is a place for everyone in the global space ecosystem. We believe that advocating for innovation betters our life here on Earth. And we do have three main divisions at Space Foundation. So you can think of us as your trusted source for information, education, and collaboration under our three divisions. Under our Symposium 365, that's where we bring together the global space leaders, whether it's military, academia, industry, and international partners, to talk about the future of the space industry. And we do that through events that are both in person as well as virtual. Under our Global Alliance division, that is our partnership area. That's our government affairs and international affairs activities, and where we look to partner and collaborate. And then the part that I'm really going to focus on today is our Center for Innovation and Education, which is about a lifelong learning platform that allows workforce development and economic opportunity for all students, teachers, entrepreneurs, and professionals to come in to the space ecosystem. What I'd like to do is define what is that space ecosystem and why is it so important to all of us. In 2020, the Space Foundation said the global space economy was $447 billion, and it's projected to grow to over $1 trillion by 2030 and over $3 trillion by 2040. And there are three types of nations that are part of the space ecosystem. There are nations that already operate in space, and there's more than 85 of those. There are nations that want to operate in space, and then there are nations that want to harness space technology to better the lives for their citizens. So in essence, every nation and every citizen is part of the global space economy. In the US, we have done comparisons of STEM professional careers, both in the space industry and not in the industry of space, but other industries. Same skill set, same degrees. And the individuals that are in the space industry have higher salaries. The great part about the global space economy is that 80% is commercial, which means it's all about entrepreneurship and innovation. It's about products and services. It's about economic growth. So when we look at what are those technology trends that relate to the space ecosystem, in essence, it's every technology you think about today. It's artificial intelligence and virtual reality. It's telecommunications. It's healthcare and biometrics. It's data analytics. It's manufacturing. It's drone technology and more. So when you're thinking about space technology and how it impacts your community, your citizens, your ecosystem, it's actually interdispersed within all technologies. A great place that you can look at to verify those great technologies that are there is the NASA Technology Transfer Office. NASA has thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized from the space industry that they've discovered as the US government, and they're available to be commercialized and brought to market as products and services, whether it's in agriculture or healthcare or transportation, energy and energy storage solutions. Another organization, not part of the Americas, but I will share, is the European Space Agency. They also have thousands of patents that are waiting to be commercialized. So what is this space technology that's benefiting us every day? Well, we are talking right now using space technology and cybersecurity. Video conferencing and telecommunications would not be possible without space technology. Your cell phone has 3 different types of space technology: cordless power tools, weather prediction, formulated food, fire retardant clothing that firefighters wear, all came from space technology. And as we continue to develop, the things that we're learning about going back to the moon and on to Mars are only going to come back and benefit us here on Earth with great entrepreneurs developing that technology, commercializing it, and bringing it so that all of us can benefit. Again, this is a picture of that global space economy from 2020. As I shared, $447 billion. But the bigger part again is that 80%, the blue and the red, represent commercial, represent entrepreneurship and innovation and jobs and economic development, because those are products and services that are being developed and delivered. The part that I also want to highlight is 50 years ago, space was primarily a few nations, primarily male, primarily government-focused industries. Now that pendulum has swung to where it's democratized. Now we need all workers in the space ecosystem. We definitely still need science, technology, engineering, and mathematic professionals, but we also need those entrepreneurs and project workers, project managers, the technical skills in the supply chain. We've seen during COVID how devastating our supply chains have been impacted during COVID. We need those trade workers. We also are looking, as that technology is coming on so quickly, we're going to have to become lifelong learners. We no longer go and learn a skill set or go and get a degree, but we need to continue to develop our skills as technology evolves and changes all our jobs. For instance, a year ago, 18 months ago, I would have never had a meeting like this virtually. I would have come in person. We would have all met in person. But COVID has demonstrated that we're learning new skills all the time that make our lives better. And this is a great example of that. By democratizing space, we now are opening the opportunities to minorities, women, retirees, but it's also not just in the US, it's around the world. Different regions of the world are now able to benefit from that space ecosystem. There are some challenges. We do have a workforce shortage. The US, Europe, Japan have a workforce shortage with an aging demographic without a workforce coming in to fill those jobs. we do see that skills mismatch. So although some individuals may be looking for a job in the space industry, and there are jobs in the space industry, they may have a skills mismatch. And that could mean an internship, a college degree, a certificate. And then again, we're looking at that innovation gap, that entrepreneurship, that ability to unlock all that technology that's waiting to be commercialized and brought to market. That's why the Space Foundation has our Center for Innovation and Education. It's all about creating that workforce development and economic opportunity so all citizens, students, teachers, entrepreneurs, and professionals can be part of that global space ecosystem. So at Space Foundation, we're looking at the current workforce. How are they reskilling and upskilling into new jobs and opportunities? And we're looking at the future workforce. How do we get space-inspired curriculum into the schools so that kids understand not just what we did with space 50 years ago or memorizing planets, but that space is about careers and opportunities. The Space Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit. We do business internationally. We do that through partnerships, sponsorships, grants, fundraising, donations, and endowments. And we do have a workforce development roadmap that we follow for all our programs that show individuals how they can come into the space industry. It's about awareness, access, training, connecting, and mentoring. And this will be my last slide that I just highlight. This is how the Space Foundation does our business. You are on that dot that says Space Foundation in the very center of this graph. As you look out at the next circle, we want to look at who is your audience you want to reach. Is it teachers? Let's say it's teachers. Then we look out at what is a measure of success for reaching those teachers. Is it teaching them all about space-inspired curriculum so they can bring that into the classroom and inspire kids to pursue those space and STEM jobs? If that's our target audience and our goal and objective, we then look at the outer ring and we look at all the programs the Space Foundation offers. And in this case, we do have an international teacher liaison program. On the outer part of this slide are the 16 different sectors that the Space Foundation considers to be part of the space ecosystem. So you certainly see the component that is space, and that would be astronauts and launch vehicles. But it's also agriculture and energy and environmental monitoring, finance, the Internet of Things, and manufacturing. So when you think about space, you can think about how it's already interdispersed in everything we do every day. So with this, I'd like to stop my formal presentation and answer any questions or allow the next speakers to present, and I will wait and be happy to answer questions as necessary. Again, thank you, Ambassador and Executive Secretary, for giving myself and the Space Foundation an opportunity to share what we love to do every day.
Thank you, Ms. Brunswick. I think the chair is having a little bit of technical difficulties, so just give her 1 minute to reconnect. Thank you so much.
There we go. I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. Very interesting. So much, there are diverse and enormous opportunities. So we look forward to continuing the conversation after the other presentations. I now invite Ms. Savage, Assistant Professor and Director of Civic AI Lab of the Northeastern University, Corey College of Computer Sciences, and Co-Director of the UNAM Civic Innovation Lab in Mexico to take the floor. Ms. Savage, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. It's a true honor to be here. Thank you very much to Cesar Braga, who invited me, and I'm very thrilled and excited to be here. I'm going to start, and thank you all. I'm very excited to meet you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So, do you guys see my screen well?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you all very much. So I'm Dr. Savage. I'm currently working at Northeastern University, but I also collaborate with the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we have been doing in order to power inclusive AI and innovation, especially within the context of Latin America and the Caribbean. So a question I'm very passionate about is thinking, how might we power inclusive innovation in Latin America and the Caribbean? I argue that in order to accomplish this, we need to, on one hand, understand what are the needs and values of the different stakeholders who are involved within different countries. And we can also use philosophy theories, especially social justice frameworks, to help us to better understand what are the social problems that these different populations are facing. And we can then design technology that is able to address the systematic problems that these populations might be facing. And these types of technologies might look like, for instance, we're going to be using deep learning in order to identify when we have unjust situations happening with workers, or we're going to be using reinforcement learning in order to guide workers to develop their skills and access better jobs. In today's talk, I'm going to be presenting to you a series of examples where I'm using this framework in order to bring innovation into Latin America and address systematic problems that Latin America and the Caribbean are facing. So the first example that I'm going to present is on using data analytics and AI to help government workers better address and support domestic violence victims. So I've been working with the United Nations Accelerator Lab in Mexico and also Mexico City's Ministry of Women. It turns out that they have a center where government workers are supporting women who are experiencing domestic violence, up to the point where some of them could potentially be murdered. So it's extremely important that these government workers are able to act fast and be able to identify when a victim is in danger, is in extreme danger. The problem that we found, and again, I used my framework in order to understand the problem, was that government workers had a hard time visualizing exactly all the support that they were giving to the women. And then also government workers themselves were exposed to constant trauma. And so we designed these data visualizations where we help government workers be able to rapidly understand what is going on with the victims that they are giving assistance to, so that they can better identify to which victims they need to act fast, to which victims they should change the type of support that they're giving them because the support might not be working. And also we provide interfaces that help support government workers because they are exposed to constant trauma. And so we're leveraging these different interfaces where we're combining AI and big data in order to better support the government workers in Mexico City. And we're also helping them to develop digital skills. This is also extremely important when we're thinking about working with the government. Now, another type of project that I want to share is we have also been designing for rural communities in Mexico. What we are doing here is, again, we use the framework. We identify that most rural communities have women because the men leave for the city. And so we designed technology that focused on some of the activities that were extremely important for women living in these rural towns, which focused around developing tools for preparing food. And we prepared this technology in ways in which women themselves could modify them, given that they might not have maybe as much strength to carry, for instance, very heavy equipment. Some of the things that we did was that we ensured that this equipment was built with clay. This allows women to be able to easily modify the devices. We also made it into a collaborative activity. Collaboration was important because women would not adopt the technology if it was not something that they had built together where their hometowns. And so we turned the technology into a collaborative activity that everyone in the town could participate. I've also been developing technology through which I use AI, specifically reinforcement learning, to guide workers to develop their digital skills. And I've been testing this within the context of rural communities so that displaced rural workers can access higher paying jobs and then get back into the workforce. I've also been working closely with different federal and local governments in order to enable AI within the government and allow the government to deliver better services. I'm working currently with Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and here we're studying what type of AI technology can be best supported within the federal government. One of the things that we have been developing are virtual assistants. The virtual assistants have been designed using culture theory to understand what type of characteristics the intelligent virtual assistants should adopt in order to be more approachable to citizens in Mexico. Additionally, these virtual assistants are also helping government workers to be able to delegate tasks that are boring for them so that they can focus on more complex tasks. Additionally, I've been focused on building public computational infrastructure with the federal government. This is extremely important given that if you want innovation, you have to also think about how you can technically support academics, NGOs, the government themselves, because if not, it's only large technology companies who will be able to have access to the innovation. So I think that it's critical that you also think about public computational infrastructure. And finally, I've been also pushing forward a whole network of Latinas in tech, and we're building here community where we're doing a lot of outreach events in order to power the next generation of future Latinas. If you're interested in this, please email me and I'll involve you in the community. Here we had a large-scale hackathon with Google. And so overall, what can you do? I would argue that think about how you can use these types of interviews to really understand what are the needs that Latin America has, Latin America and the Caribbean, and you can adapt the technology, design new technology for these regions. I think that right now there's a huge opportunity to design, especially for Latin America and the Caribbean, given that a lot of technology has been developed for the global. And well, thank you all very much. It was such a pleasure to be here. And here's my contact information.
Thank you, Ms. Savage, for that very insightful and interesting presentation. Look forward to continued conversation with you right after.
Thank you.
I'm now pleased to invite Ms. Bernice Zimmer, founder and president of ILAS Bank in Brazil. Ms. Zimmer, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Doctora Zimmer. Oh, bien, gracias.
Olá, boa tarde a todos, obrigada.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you to the ambassador, to the executive secretary, and all participants for allowing me to participate in this meeting. And now I'm going to share my screen with you. Very well. I'm going to speak a little bit about ILAS Bank. It's a digital bank that is for women. Here we see the different gaps, the financial gaps, $1.7 trillion globally. And it principally affects women. There's a great deal of non-remunerated work. Also, it affects women in career breaks when they need to take care of their children, etc. And there is a lending gap. These gender gaps lead to domestic violence, exclusion of women, and also stereotypes about women. It also increases obstacles in accessing finance. So we have this gender gap, we have this payment gap, we see the average wages that men and women receive. Then we also see this difference of 7% with regard to retirement. We have the unearned or unpaid work. We have an unemployment gap. And we see that more women who are heads of family are out of work than men who are heads of family. Now, also with regard to education, we see a difference. And this has increased during the pandemic. Here, we have the highest gap, 38%. between those who are in the workforce. And this is the situation in Brazil. And so the question is, how can we change this today in Latin America? We see opportunities in businesses expanding. 87% of women in the Caribbean and Latin America have cell phones. And so this is a 1% gap. So we can create banking services for the entire region very easily. The only thing we need is access and use of a cell phone. We can, therefore, improve the situation so that the entire Latin American population has access to a digital account, a digital bank, and this can help reduce the financial gap. That's what has happened during the pandemic. This led to many people doing transactions online through digital banks. We had an increase in those who did mobile banking using credits online, and we had mobile banks, and we had an increase in people participating in the banking system. So this meant that there was a decrease in the unbanked population, and that went down 8%. So what can we deduct from all of this? If we look at the economically active inhabitants in Brazil, well, we can optimize people who are investing. We have 103 million people, 49% of the total population. Of these, 41 million are investing. And so what we need are women investors. Women, well, we have worked with different kinds of women, those who invest and those who save and those who neither invest nor save. And here are the different kinds of accounts that women can have so that they can have access to financial tools. A budgeting tool that's automatic, an open banking account, a financial planner tool, and also an automatic investment tool. That allows optimal use of the financial system. This has been offered to women. This is to encourage them to save and also to have women invest. 77% of women consider that investing is responsible, and 79% of women say they can prepare a financial plan if they have a tool to do so. The first thing to take into account is to offer this service, offer solutions that are fitting for the market. And we need to have all kinds of services offered. And women need to see what are the movements in their accounts, what the financial planning tools are. And they can use the financial planning tool to be able to make investments, thematic investments. These are the kinds of investments that women make because they like to invest in investments that they think will lead to sustainable development. Here we have an entire ecosystem that we offer at low cost of planning and investing, lending. And this is a second phase, lending money to women who are entrepreneurs. And we're also trying to connect up with online banks in Europe to go forward with this. And then we have selling services and products online. These are services for women that are created by women. Here, you can see the bank. This is a model for the bank. It's quite dynamic, easy to use, and you don't need to know anything about finance. Any women of any social class, of any education level, can use this. They can use this account, they can have access to credit, and they can make investments in this way. The aim of the bank is to allow investing to be easy for women. With this, I conclude, and if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them. I thank you for your attention, and I'd be glad to offer more details.
So we will have questions for your very innovative solution for women, a digital bank for women. Thank you all. I'd like to now invite each of our guests to please turn, well, you have done so, turn your cameras on so we can begin the dialogue. I'll start first with you, Ms. Shelley Brunswick. How can the Center for Innovation and Education and the Space Foundation collaborate with our governments and partners to expand experiential learning in STEM and inclusive entrepreneurial opportunities in top innovation sectors for our countries?
Cris,
That's a long question. I think I should break it down a bit. Is it clear on it, on that question? Okay, great.
Well, thank you. That's a wonderful opportunity. And I will share the Space Foundation. We have been in business since 1983. And although we are located in the United States, we do business internationally. And we do partner with governments around the world. For instance, we've just completed a program with the United Arab Emirates Space Agency. We have other programs going on in other parts of the world. So we do business internationally. And some of the programs that you're looking at, so you didn't describe if it was adult workforce or primary school, but I'll talk about both. Through our Center for Innovation and Education, we look at both entrepreneurship. So do we want to partner with universities or other organizations and countries to bring our Space Commerce Institute activities to your community? And that's about teaching entrepreneurship. What are those space innovation opportunities? And how do we create more entrepreneurship and innovation globally? And that's critical, and especially with today's focus on women, when we unlock women's innovation and entrepreneurship, we help raise many, and that includes their families and communities with them. So we look at both entrepreneurship at the adult level. We then look at the other side, which is the primary school. So K through 12 and teaching teachers. And we have programs in both. One of the things that we've done at Space Foundation is we do have space and STEM inspired curriculum that can be brought into the classroom. What we've learned through our research is if you do programs outside of the classroom, it can be very challenging for all students to participate. Maybe their school doesn't have after-school programs. Maybe they have to go home and take care of family chores or other family members. Maybe they have a single parent. So it's really important that the curriculum is part of the normal day-to-day school year. So we have that for all grade levels, and it's really important to reach younger children, elementary school, junior high school, because that's when kids are formulating career path and ideas. And then we also have programs because we want to make sure the parents and communities understand the importance of space, because many times there is a perception that space is not for us. Space is about astronauts and rocket scientists, and that's not for us. That's not for us in our country or our community or what we do. And our goal is to come in, break down that misperception that space is not for us with families, with community leaders, and have those discussions about this is how you can create a future pathway for your children, but also your community. And then we also look at teaching teachers, because when we can reach teachers, teachers have the ability to bring that curriculum and those tools into the classroom every day and impact students and their future. So we want to give teachers the tools that they need to be able to move academia in the direction of these great opportunities. And again, it's not one size fits all, because every country and every community is different. Where are you? Are you operating in space? So there are many American countries in the Americas that are operating in space. Some want to operate in space, and some will utilize space technology. So there could be different ideas for how we work with your communities. So that's kind of a long answer to a long question, but I do want to share, Ambassador and excellent Executive Secretary, that we want to work. If individuals are interested, it's not a one size fits all. We need to sit down, understand who you're trying to reach, what are the goals and objectives, and then how do we create a plan that meets those goals and objectives over time. And we want to build a relationship with you and be your partner. So I'll pause there. Thank you so much. I'm honored again to be joining you today.
Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. And I'll come back to you with just one more question. But first, let me ask Dr. Savage, what is needed from our governments and stakeholders to access and leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to improve inclusion and allow youth, women, and underserved communities to use and benefit from such transformative?
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Wonderful question, and very actually thought-provoking. I think that what is key is to enable more collaborations between government, academia, NGOs, and also industry partners. So academia can facilitate and help the government to be able to understand these new technologies and how these new technologies can feed into their pipelines and how they might be able to innovate. NGOs can also help governments in order to connect with different marginalized communities in order to use and implement these technologies with communities that would benefit the most from having these technologies in their hands. And then the industry partners can provide even more computational infrastructure and support to be able to deploy these technologies at scale. And so I think it's key to have ecosystems where these different stakeholders are working together.
Yes, thank you. Very clear answer. Thank you. Ms.
Thank
Zimmer,
you.
I have the question, the question that was prepared for us to discuss today. But before I ask that question, let me ask you, how many members do you have at Illes Bank? How many women have opened their account?
We have 18 specialists. Many have doctorates or are experts. People with specialized knowledge in areas like gender diversity. People with master's degrees in finance or artificial intelligence. Many have experience in universities and in the technological sector. We are a select group. We work very hard to be able to democratize access to finance and access of women to finance throughout our country.
Your services.
$50,000 women, that's the estimate we have of women who access our system. We just launched a savings account And we made this user friendly so it was easier to use. And so people feel that they can actually identify with this and use it. We are developing different communication platforms for finance, which we hope will operate soon. And so we can actually link up financial education of women and women's empowerment in Brazil. So this is a movement that tries to give access to financial services for women, so women can have access to finance to start their own businesses and have access to technology. We have some projects, some STEM projects, training of girls who'd like to know more about technology and finance. In 2 years, we've been working with technology like artificial intelligence in finance. There are only 3 robotic applications in the world, and we are using artificial intelligence to make available a quote-unquote robot that can actually personalize investment solutions so women feel sure about investing, that they feel they can invest. That is the work that we're doing, that are gender-based, that women understand how to use these devices. And this allows women to have access to finance systems and investment systems. They can just push a button and invest. And there's automatic monitoring that makes it reliable.
With potential partners outside of Brazil who'd want to offer this innovative solution to their countries, in other countries.
Well, the platform is quite good. The Embassy of Brazil in Berlin selected us to present this platform. But there are other developers that are interested in disseminating this platform and disseminating the benefits of this system, even for the Brazilian educational system. There is financial education in our schools, and also we have a module for teachers. And we believe this module could be used on an educational platform to teach people to invest. And this can be done also using Word and Excel. In other words, anyone in Latin America could weigh in and add their knowledge to this and tweak the systems, because these systems have existed for some 20 years. We have a system that works very well. We have also evaluations that have been done. This was done by MIT specialists, and they said that the system had a great potential. So we could use this know-how, and we could do this actively. Thank you very much.
Zimmer. Ms. Brunswick, just the final question for me. Can we build regional value chains, linking capabilities and promoting engagement from all the countries of the Americas in space and related industries?
Absolutely. What the Space Foundation promotes is that global space economy, the ecosystem of how we are interdependent and can work together. So we can absolutely do that. And we'd be happy to talk with individuals that might be interested in partnering with us on starting those discussions and starting to figure out what is the right way forward. A month ago, I will share, we did have a discussion with the Pan American Development Foundation as well. So I think we all share some common interests in creating access and opportunities for all citizens here in the Americas, but as well as around the world. And space is a great opportunity for everyone to benefit. And I do again want to thank you, Ambassador and Executive Secretary, for inviting Space Foundation and myself to join you and your distinguished colleagues.
It is certainly our pleasure so far to be having this dialogue with you. I will now ask Dr. Savage, what kind of collaboration programs do you envision the OAS can undertake with the AI labs you are leading to respond to the urgent development needs in the Americas that have been heightened by the pandemic?
I think that some of, thank you very much, Ambassador. Also, very fascinating question again. I think that some of the key issues to address right now after the pandemic is, on one hand, empowering skill development. There are a number of jobs that, because of the pandemic, have suddenly disappeared. And so we really need to help individuals throughout America be able to develop the skills that they need in order to access new types of jobs. And I think the pandemic has forced a number of us to have to develop new digital skills, which is great. But there is still a long way to go in order to empower these individuals to access new types of jobs. So I think that one of the key things that the Organization of American States can do is to unite forces with, for instance, different research labs, including mine at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, and Northeastern University, in order to start to deploy and connect academics with governments to start to help them have access to these new technologies and start to see how together we can help these workforces to power a better future for them.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Savage.
Thank you.
I will now invite the member states to ask questions of our expert panel. We will start with Brazil. Will have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to thank the chair and the executive secretary for having organized this discussion. I would also like to congratulate you on the selection of speakers, these prestigious and impressive women who have made wonderful presentations, and I think we need to really leverage their know-how. Now, it is also, well, it makes me very proud to have an expert from Brazil with us. And as Dr. Zimmer has explained to us, she is empowering women. I'd like to ask Dr. Zimmer, how is it that Ellis Bank has mapped out its clients? How do you know who needs this service? Brazil is a very large and very diverse country. So I just want to understand how you have reached those potential clients who can really take advantage of the services you offer. I'd also like to take this opportunity to ask, what is the mechanism you use to identify potential clients and potential investors? Because this seems like a novel kind of fintech mechanism that can be used. Thank you very much, Mr. Leal, for your question. Ellis Bank worked on a mapping of clients for 2 years. Looking at what kind of services were being used and what services were needed. Now, people have access to internet. using, for example, social media. Many women access the bank for marketing purposes. They also take training courses. They do this on internet, and they even do it through Instagram and TikTok. Many Brazilians have access to these platforms and access them 4 times a day. And women have very good access to social media. So we mapped out these women in Brazil. We saw which women are working in the agro sector, women who were in the business sector, in all kinds of different fields, and women who are trying to prevent violence, who are training other women. And so we try to also have these women promote this idea amongst women's movements. We have a page which has not been launched yet, but it's one we're going to launch, and it's for all women. And so we don't want to be just a business. We want to be more than a business. We want to be an ecosystem to train women in finance. And thinking about the best way to develop financial technology in Brazil. So we are a movement to popularize finance, a system for women.
Thank you for your question, delegation of Brazil, and the answers. We now recognize the delegation of the United States.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank the panelists so much for their excellent presentations. And this is just really exciting to hear specific examples of women in STEM and ways that we can engage women on these digital platforms. That's something that the United States is passionate and excited about. So it's great to have you all with us today. I have so many questions, but I want to be mindful of the fact that we have others who certainly have the same kind of enthusiasm as we do. So I'll focus on one question, and I wanted to direct this to Ms. Brunswick, if you wouldn't mind. My question is, given the rapid growth of the space economy and no doubt the influence that it's going to have in the future, what steps would you recommend or have been thinking about that governments can take to help vulnerable populations or those that have been excluded from STEM-related spaces? How can we help them also enjoy the benefits of this rapidly growing industry? And I know you mentioned, for example, NASA's Technology Transfer Bank as a way that entrepreneurs can jump in and take on that initiative. But if you had other concrete thoughts that we as governments, as we're thinking about these issues, recommendations that we could consider, that would be much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And that is a wonderful question. And what I will share with you is a lot of this relates to that public-private partnership. Many times government brings people to the table, provides that initial funding to start the programs that are valuable, that create long-term changes and solutions. And so what I mean by that is here in the U.S., one of the examples that the U.S. government, the Congress passed and became law was Commercial Crew in 2004, which allowed NASA to partner with commercial launch entities such as SpaceX, Blue Origin. That law, that legislation created that commercial launch enterprise that we're now seeing come to fruition. So it's taken 16 years, but that started with the right legislation. So it's important for legislators and governments to set the right policies to create the change they want to see in their economy. The other part with that public-private partnership is providing the seed funding to create the programs that will help drive the change In the case with the launch vehicles, NASA was given the ability to provide seed funding to SpaceX and other commercial launch providers to grow their infrastructure and create that capability, which ultimately lowered the cost of launch and now created a huge marketplace for all industries. It used to be very expensive to launch. Now academia can launch things. Students are launching canned satellites. So by lowering the cost of launch and commercializing that, we've now created more access and opportunity for all. But that's on your creating the ecosystem. Government also leads when it comes to creating the workforce, and that's creating the funding for initial programs. And again, we can start with public-private partnerships. Does governments come in with some of the initial funding to start pilot projects? One example is the program you specifically referenced about our entrepreneurial program. That initially was a program we started with the Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency. And we took an entrepreneurial program to break down the barriers and the perceptions to diversity and other underrepresented groups throughout the United States to show them that there was a pathway into the space ecosystem where they could become entrepreneurs, or if they were already entrepreneurs, how do they create another line of business in the space ecosystem? And we took that around the country. Initially, it was pre-COVID, so it was all done in person in partnerships with universities and industry. And then during COVID, we're actually doing a program with a company that is creating a more diversified supply chain, and we're now doing that virtual. So I share with you that government is a leader that comes to the table, that helps create that seed funding and the right policies. And the nonprofit organizations like Space Foundation and others, academia, and private sector economies will come to the table as well to help develop solutions that will drive the economic change and create the workforce opportunities that all of us want around the world. So I hope that helped answer the question. And the Space Foundation is happy to always be a partner at that table to come up with ideas on how we can create solutions to solve those challenges.
Thank you. We thank the Delegation of US for that question and your comprehensive answer, Ms. Brunswick. We now recognize the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago. Your Excellency.
Good afternoon, Excellency, distinguished Chair. Chair, the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago must again, as we did on the 31st of August, commend you for the excellent manner in which you have been chairing the proceedings of this committee. The topic today is riveting for all of us because it is one that addresses a real issue. And I must at the same time acknowledge the support that I'm sure you received from the Executive Secretary, Osborne, and her team. I must pause too to just acknowledge the excellent presentations from our distinguished panelists. They've been so insightful, instructive. I know Trinidad and Tobago will certainly draw on several of the lines for action and follow-up. And Chair, you recall that on the 31st of August, we did call for a network of our science, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship institutes in the hemisphere. Well, today, Chair, our delegation has a surprise. I will not attempt to ask any questions. We have, in fact, with us the president of our own National Institute of Higher Education, Research, Science, and Technology, Mistress Marlene Lord-Lewis, another woman in STEM, in science and technology. And so I will now be pleased to offer the floor to her, and I'm sure that she is in a much better place to pose the questions, to really engage these distinguished and expert women who have presented here for us today. So please permit me now, Chair, to offer the floor to Mrs. Lord-Lewis, and she will comment and pose questions that she would consider appropriate for the discussion. Congratulations again, and thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lord-Lewis,
thank you. We look forward to hearing from Mrs. Lord-Lewis. Thank you.
Ambassador, I believe she needs to request the floor. I don't see her name on the request list.
In the interim, while we are getting Mrs. Lord Lewis connected, we will recognize the delegation of Mexico.
A very good afternoon, Ambassador, Madam Chair. Mexico ascribes very, very high priority to the measures that are taken to support and advance the cause of women. That is why we are very much behind the idea of advancing our understanding of STEM and the making available of that technology to young girls and growing women. Mexico is committed to ensuring that girls, adolescents, and women who have been historically relegated are no longer, and are very much at the center of the measures that we're taking to develop, not least in these parlous times of the pandemic. That is why we are so very impressed and thankful to the three speakers who have graced us with their presence today. Dr. Savitz, who works with the UNAM, the National University of Autonomous University of Mexico, is very, very highly prized here and has worked closely with Mexican authorities, not least with the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with a view to assist the Mexican citizenry to work particularly with our migrant Mexicans who are, need I say it, in a particular position of vulnerability. Now, this is perhaps something that we could learn more about, how various elements lend themselves to working with the users and how she might think that might be further boosted in that particular circumstance. I would like, says Dr. Savage, to appreciate your question. It's a pleasure to meet you, however, virtually, and thanks for recognizing my efforts. The reason we so push on virtual modes is because it was a good way to teach technology in a way that was user-friendly, easy to accept by the citizenry. And one great example was helping people who needed to do business with the government and who has time to cut through the red tape, et cetera, et cetera. And so to be able to do this when they were maybe sitting on a bus and could contact us on their iPhones or some other form was already a step in the right direction. And I'm speaking about governmental procedures, but of course it has to do with payments and so forth. But particularly on this point, it was very well received, and citizens thought it was great to be able to do whatever it was they needed to do while they were doing everything else that they needed to do. And we would love dealing with you and indeed with other countries more closely in order to share what we have learned. And Ambassador, the fact is, and I would like to state clearly, the Mexican Foreign Affairs Ministry has worked very closely with UNAM. The interpreter regrets we have lost part of what the distinguished professor is saying. She's now back. The fact of the matter is it's been a win-win. We've gained, they've gained. It's often the case, is it not? Where academe on the one hand and government on the other have a lot to give each other and a lot to learn from each other, I dare say. So that's one point I wanted to share. Another, if I may, is that we have worked very, very closely with the workers who are actually in the call centers of government. We're trying to help them, empower them, not to push them to lose their jobs, which is always a concern, but rather to enhance them and give them a chance to do more better. Now, that's an attractive prospect. They get it. And so when somebody calls to say, gee, well, how soon can I go to the passport office to get a new passport? Well, this is the kind of question that you may be certain is posed n number of times a day. And there are a lot of virtual assistants, therefore, that are welcome. Thanks so much for recognizing how the government of Mexico is really very much behind an agenda that is pro-women, pro-rural women, pro-all women, frankly, through technology. Thank you so much.
We are still trying to ascertain if the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago will be able to rejoin. Secretary Osborne, do we know from our technical persons?
Ambassador, no, not yet. I'm checking with Ambassador Philip Spencer to see whether.
Okay.
I believe.
Yes.
He's requesting the floor.
Yes. Okay. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, we seem to have had a technology challenge, and I am unable to solve it at this moment. However, Chair, if you permit me to allow any other delegations that may wish to request the floor, or for the very engaging discussion that is ongoing with our panelists to continue, and be assured that we would seek to request the floor immediately as President Lord Rose is ready to speak. Thank you. I look forward to joining the conversation.
Thank you. Well, this conversation will continue with the member states, giving their specific input in terms of their own specific country needs, solutions, and offers for cooperation or innovative approaches. So for now, I want to just take this opportunity to say that with no other representative wishing to ask questions of our invited guests, I want to thank you all, Ms. Brunswick, Dr. Savage, Dr. Zimmer, for making the time out of your busy schedule to be here and participate in this meeting and sharing these most interesting and innovative programs with us. We look forward to your continued engagement with us here at the OAS and with all our member states. Thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigada, embaixadora.
Gracias.
Madam Chair, you have Ecuador on the list requesting.
Ecuador. You have the floor.
Gracias, estimada.
Thank you very much, distinguished chair. No, we'll come in the next bit when you give the floor to all delegations. But let me, since I now have it, congratulate each of the panelists and thank them most sincerely. It's been riveting. Really, it has. So thanks very much indeed.
Stay on. We'll call on you next. Thank you again, our special guests, and we appreciate your presentations today. Most interesting.
Thank you for the honorary to be joining you today, Ambassador and Executive Secretary. Thank you so much. We wish you a wonderful day, and we look forward to partnering with you and all our member countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Secretary. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We now again recognize the delegation of Ecuador.
Madam Chair and distinguished Secretary Ms. Osborne, thank you so very much for bringing this issue before us. It's of such importance. I'd like to introduce Maria Consuelo Ramirez, who is the Director of Scientific Development in our country, who would like to share her views. Thank you. Dr. Ramirez. Oh, good afternoon. I hope I can be heard. And so a very good afternoon, Madam Chair, and a good afternoon to all. I can only applaud this hugely important initiative. It offers us the opportunity to exchange views on matters that really matter and may to some seem repetitive, but quite frankly, most of us get the fact that they are not repetitive and they will always be useful. Indeed, necessary, I would say. It's all the more important when they relate to women and to how a better grasp of STEM issues is a platform for women to advance in society. In Ecuador, let me simply say, I can observe that at a personal level and in general terms, I'm going to be very frank, there are a number of historic issues like violence, maternal death and childhood, the very low participation of women in political ambits, which is no way representative of the percentage of women, and so many other, alas, domains in which women are just not where they need to be yet. Have a very minute fraction of the participation they should have. That said, there have been some elements of progress, not enough for us to lay back and figure that we're there yet, not at all, but some progress nonetheless. And so, in a nutshell, let me tell you where we stand in Ecuador. There are 1,072 careers associated with technology, information, communications, natural sciences, mathematics, statistics, engineering, the STEM domains writ large. And that number of careers available to women has increased. Yet again, not as much as we would wish, because let me tell you, won't be a surprise, it's an ongoing struggle. We're not there yet. We know that. However, every step we take is a cause for rejoicing and makes a difference for women in society. Of course, we know that the gender gap, women representing, only 28.4% of researchers. That is, of course, alarming at the world level, but in the region, the question of parity, of gender equality, is a hugely complicated issue, not least because of gender-based violence, which remains a tremendous scourge. And so to move towards equal and participatory participation of women in the society from Cenecit, the group I represent, we have sought to promote various incentives and other means by which women will be encouraged to launch into research and STEM issues. And we are hard at it. Now, there are innumerable problems, budgetary problems, numbers of other types of problems that, alas, remain constraints. It would be infinitely easier for women to go forward if those constraints were significantly reduced, not say removed. So the challenges are there as an institution, what we can do to buttress these efforts and open the doors more widely to women. Lots of these elements have been sought after and discussed and studied in workshops. We have a register of researchers where we very much push participation of women. But to be frank, we're still learning. We're still generating strategies so that we can do better and for a greater number. So that's how it is. I'm being very candid. And again, thank you so much for organizing this meeting because, you know, the more we learn, the better off we are. And the more we learn from each other, the more easily, even if that is a relative term, we can go forward. And some steps that some people would say, well, wait a minute, that's totally unnecessary. In fact, is not the case. And I just hope that all that has been said here will not remain moot points, moot or mute, but truly assist us in getting out there and making a difference because we need those tools. We need to come up with new strategies that will in fact yield a broader and deeper participation of women in society. So a million thanks for this chance to speak. Thank you.
Delegation of Ecuador and now recognize the delegation of Peru.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and distinguished Executive Secretary, dear colleagues. I would like on behalf of Peru to voice the immense satisfaction that we feel vis-a-vis the work that you, Madam Ambassador, Chair, and the Executive Secretary are carrying out to move us forward in our understanding of the role of women in science and technology. And we think all of this will be hugely beneficial to our country. Certainly the issues that have been broached today cut very deep and come very close. It's all a good thing. There is Mr. Marco Rinaldi with us, who's the coordinator of policies and the popularization of science and technology, CONCITEC, in Peru, that may have, and I believe does have, his own little grain of salt to bring, which may be of interest. If you would give him the floor, I'd be most grateful.
No sé si le podrían a través.
The Peruvian delegate wonders whether through the platform or the tech support we might give him the floor. I've told him that we are seeking to give him the floor. He is, by the way, on the list of speakers. And thank you also to Ms. Vasquez. That little grain of salt that she mentioned and that I would like to add will be as follows. But let me begin by saying truly, the three presentations that we have heard this afternoon have been stellar and are certainly clear as to how important it is to boost the understanding and the study of science, but from my corner of the field, also technology. Let me share with you two experiences we've had in Peru. First, from the CONACYT, which is the directing entity that deals with technology. In our program of popularization, which I lead, there is the stated objective to promote technology at the national level. Now, those are tall words, but You've got to try, especially in a pandemic context such as we are living in. 28th of September is a particularly important day because at the world level, if people don't know it, this is the International Day for Scientific Culture. This is the International Day for studying science. And so this is a very apt time to discuss these matters, is it not? Now, we most especially want to sow the seeds for young girls and adolescents to be tempted to go into science and technology. This very much tracks what our Ecuadorian colleague said a little while ago. We have had some very positive experiences. What we have, our basic elementary and secondary school, our basic school, includes clubs on science and technology, and then you have science fairs. There's one called Eureka, very appropriately, and we are pushing those extracurricular fora in which thousands, you heard me right, thousands in the plural, of boys and girls are participating daily in the promotion of science and technology activities. This is done from an inclusive standpoint, and that means that above and beyond the STEM areas, there is a little bit of an artistry, of a creative streak. So that means that we're opening at the base of the pyramid, opening the field to more people. People who like art can come in too, who knew? And so science and technology, while it remains the main focus, is that of the 70,000 students who are members of those clubs, 50% or 51% are women and girls, and 49% are boys. Isn't that good news? And so I'm not going to go into more details, but I did want to say it because I think it's worth saying, by the way. And so this talks about gender equity on the move. And also another initiative that I want to mention is that Eureka Science Fair, which is the most important national competition. There are between 500 to 6,000 students who participate. And over the last 10 years, at the national level, the tail end of this competition, we have managed to garner 53% of girls who are adolescents, and the remaining percentage are boys. And so this is a trend that is consolidated. Sometimes that varies. I'm not saying it's homogeneous year by year, but what this shows us is that the route to participation for girls and adolescents at the basic educational level, the elementary and secondary school level, is working. And so from elementary level and secondary level to superior education, there too, in terms of access, as the ambassador pointed out quite well, we know that the pandemic has really hit girls and adolescents hard, women in general, in terms of the job market, in terms of pretty much everything else. And so we in Concitec are also seeking very hard to carve out better inclusion as between men and women. And from the present perspective, from where we stand now, I'm happy to say things are looking good, looking better anyway. Thank you.
And let me acknowledge and thank Ambassador Solano for giving way to allow the delegation of Peru to complete their intervention. And I'll now ask Ambassador Solano of Costa Rica to take the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Costa Rica is so pleased to address such important issues which have to do with science, technology, and innovation. I'd like to thank the chair for her interesting questions, as well as the panelists for their interesting presentations, which show both opportunities and challenges that we face today. With a comprehensive approach and having people at the center of public policy, and having as a priority innovation, human talent, and know-how, Costa Rica has adopted national strategies and programs so all children, adolescents, and women, especially vulnerable people from large metropolitan areas and rural areas, can have access to the digital age and developing our entire country. This is our goal. Today, I wanted to talk about the national policy for equality between women and men in science, technology, telecommunications, and innovation, which we have implemented to be able to reduce gaps with regard to access to using technology, to disseminate contributions of women in the sector, to coordinate between institutions and organizations and businesses interested in reducing gender gaps in the technology and science sectors, and having them work together to achieve this. We also have the Talent Program 4.0, laboratories for digital literacy in societies based on know-how, which links up our policies to be able to bring this to vulnerable people throughout the country. This helps us to attain our aspirations and have a population that can access the digital age and to reduce the digital gap through innovation laboratories in the communities with a gender perspective and a mission to allow people to have skills to gain jobs, especially with regard to SMEs. This also supports access to a post-COVID recovery, and this is a long-term program. Chair, these policies have the goal of creating spaces and initiatives addressed to protect vulnerable people, to close these gaps, and to build back better. As states, we need to offer a whole array of opportunities to those young people so that they can develop their potential. In Costa Rica, we have been successful in one initiative. It is the initiative of Ms. Sandra Kaufman. She overcame many obstacles. She began with very humble beginnings. She became a physicist, and she has been working for 30 years at NASA. She is now the assistant director of Earth Sciences in NASA here in Washington, D.C. Her profile has been highlighted by UN Women because she is an example for women, especially for girls and adolescents. And she has been to many schools in Costa Rica to motivate girls so that they choose science and technology careers. She shares her story, and she talks about the demand on the job market for these sectors now and in the future. This is an example of positive influence, and this is an initiative between the public and private sector with an academic approach. These initiatives can be used without financing or too much financing, and this can allow us to change the future for our girls and young people. And we would love to share this and other successful initiatives we have in entrepreneurship, science, and technology with other countries. And we thank SETI so much for supporting our states. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Chair.
We thank the delegation of Costa Rica and now recognize the delegation of the United States.
Thank you so much, Chair, and we would like to, in particular, thank you for convening such a great panel today of all women who are making a critical difference on these issues. We also appreciate the opportunity to discuss this important issue for our hemisphere and have some really exciting initiatives to share today. As backdrop, the COVID-19 pandemic amplified the unequal burden of care work, often shouldered by women and girls. Women take on a disproportionate amount of care work compared to men, which is often unpaid and undervalued, and can further marginalize women living in poverty, women heads of household, and essential workers, among others. Yet the COVID-19 crisis demonstrates just how vital care work is. In the United States, we see an alarming number of women, approximately 2.5 million, exiting the labor market as they are forced to choose between employment and providing adequate care for loved ones. Vice President Harris called this trend a national emergency. Around the world, a similar exodus of women from the workforce, an increase in unpaid care is especially concerning for families with young children and from underserved communities, where mothers are more likely to be the sole or primary breadwinners and may face financial burdens for years to come. Economic value of unpaid care work is substantial and important for every economy in the world. There is no paid formal economy without the often unpaid, sometimes informal, and many times unseen care work of women. We must value care work for what it is, the foundation that holds our economies together. In addition to the disproportionate burden of care work that women shoulder, the COVID-19 pandemic has also exacerbated a range of other challenges women face in the labor market, including the gender digital divide during historic use of ICTs, lack of financial access and literacy, and underrepresentation and low engagement in policymaking. With this in mind, the United States is committed to increasing women's economic security and opportunities at home and abroad, and to partnering with governments, the private sector, and civil society to enhance protections and reduce the full range of barriers to facilitate women's meaningful participation in the global economy. This is why the United States proudly announced its intent to establish the Gender Equity and Equality Action Fund with a planned $100 million in fiscal year 2021 and a request of $200 million in the FY 2022 President's budget. This fund advances economic security for women and girls globally, prevents and responds to gender-based violence, supports underserved and marginalized populations, and helps address the disproportionate long-term impacts that COVID-19, climate change, outdated laws and regulations, conflict, and crisis have on women and girls. In addition to promoting the economic security of women and girls, the U.S. also acknowledges that women need to be active participants in all aspects of the global economy, including the digital economy. Women's roles in the digital economy start with bridging the gender digital divide once and for all. As we announced at the OAS Inter-American Dialogue of the high-level authorities of MSMEs in September, the United States has pledged $500,000 to the OAS Economically Empowered Women for Equitable and Resilient Societies project, with the goal of increasing women's participation in the digital economy and contributing to the region's economic recovery. This project will specifically target women-led MSMEs and provide them with capacity building, training, and tools to effectively function in the economy, build sustainable livelihoods, and increase their participation in policy making and leadership within their societies. In the case of another US-funded OAS program, the America's Competitiveness Exchange, or ACE, strives to foster equity and equality in all of its activities. ACE has supported and encouraged female participation in all of its iterations. Female participation in ACE has grown from 36% in the first 2 editions to 55% in its most recent iterations. In fact, 2 of the amazing women who just presented today during this agenda item participated in ACE Colorado in this past August. So we're really excited to see them here as well. ACE focuses efforts on including women in their specialized panels on best practices and the retention of female talent in science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We are proud to see that ACE has influenced programs and initiatives in the region to empower women, such as RISE in Trinidad and Tobago and Sci Girls in Belize. Additionally, the work of SETI reflects the importance the OAS gives to the theme of today's CETI meeting. For example, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network, or ITEN, a US-funded initiative of the OAS, supports several teams that work to close the gender gap in STEM fields through pre-K through 12 education. For example, at the early childhood level, ITEN co-published with the Colombian Ministry of Education and Siemens Stiftung Foundation a guide that analyzes education policies and gender gaps in STEM fields and provides practical guidance to teachers in the region. Statistics provided by another US-funded initiative that focuses on small business development centers, or SBDCs, show that women accounted for the majority of registered clients accessing the services of the SBDCs. That is why the current phase of this project will build the capacity of women entrepreneurs to access local, regional, and international value chains, and will include seminars on business opportunity identification for women and youth entrepreneurs. In closing, as demonstrated through the various projects that I referenced today, initiatives and other forms of participation in which the U.S. engages, the Biden administration affirms that partnership and multi-stakeholder collaboration at home and around the world is foundational to helping women and girls access the connectivity and skills they need to thrive in and shape the economies of tomorrow. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. Thank you for your valuable intervention on the initiatives from the United States. We now recognize the delegation of Canada.
My apologies, Chair. There appears to have been a slight technical difficulty there, but I'm reporting for duty. I would like to thank you so much, and good afternoon, Secretary Osborne. Good afternoon, Ambassador Marks. Thank you so much for convening a fruitful discussion, an engaging discussion. The new format is very much welcome. The panelists were incredibly enriching, and I'd also like to greet all of the distinguished delegates here this afternoon and thank them for sharing their national experiences on this important topic. Canada has endeavored to answer the 4 discussion questions that were put forward to us in the concept paper. We think it was a useful exercise, and so we'd like to share our thoughts along those lines. The first discussion question, Chair, that you asked us was, what are the key challenges for your country to close gender and inclusion gaps? Canada faces many of the same challenges described in the concept paper and by my colleagues in their remarks. Women are overrepresented in low-paying part-time occupations in Canada and are underrepresented in full-time high-paying ones. In particular, women are underrepresented in lucrative fields related to science and technology, like engineering and computer science. In occupations like software engineering and computer programming, women in Canada make up less than 1 in 7 workers. In addition to this, the pandemic is exacerbating inequalities, as many have mentioned today, including those experienced by Indigenous and visible minority communities, both in Canada and abroad. So we're asked the question then, what specific good practices or approaches has our country successfully implemented to advance the participation and leadership of women in STEM and education careers? So Canada has implemented a number of programs to reduce obstacles faced by, but not limited to, women, Indigenous peoples, people with disabilities, members of visible minorities, and members of the LGBTQ+ communities. These include a number of programs, and And we're happy to share information on this and connect member states with the leads of these programs if that's at all helpful. But I'll mention just 3 right now. One is we have a Business Development Bank of Canada initiated a $200 million Women in Technology Venture Fund that has been quite successful. We also have launched a Dimensions, Equality, Diversion, and Inclusion project that recognizes post-secondary institutions for their progress in achieving equity and inclusion in their policies and research programs. So we're really trying to harness universities and get them engaged. And then we have what's called the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund, which is investing $100 million in business support for organizations providing training, mentorship, and financial literacy to women entrepreneurs, much like what our presenter earlier today has shared with us about the importance of helping women learn to invest. So as mentioned, we'd be happy to provide additional details on these programs to member states and can facilitate contacts with responsible institutions in Canada if that's helpful. The third question you asked, and you asked 4, so we're halfway there, is what offers of cooperation or partnerships can we bring to the table for regional cooperation in this area? Well, it's very clear to us that gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls in all their diversity is at the center of our Feminist International Assistance Policy, as well as Canada's COVID-19 response and recovery plans. Canada has also called on the global community to prioritize gender equality in their own recovery efforts. What this essentially means is that every single dollar of our international assistance is allocated and dispersed through the lens of how does this advance gender equality. So in particular, at the Generation Equality Forum just this past June 2021, Prime Minister Trudeau announced $180 million in new funding to advance gender equality around the world. In particular, $50 million of this funding is focused on the Global Partnership for Education to promote education and empowerment of girls and women in our eligible countries in our region, and these include Bolivia, Dominica, Grenada, Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Last but not least, what can we do within the context of the OAS SETI to close the gender divide in science, technology, and innovation? So we have 4 specific points. Obviously, we think that in order to advance gender equality and close the gender wage gap in STEM, supporting women in the pursuit of quality, well-paying jobs in these fields is essential. So this meeting and getting us discussing this is a step in the right direction. We also recognize that developing programs that support underrepresented populations working in STEM helps increase well-paying jobs within the workforce. And we note the launch of the OAS's Women in Digital Economy project that the US also just referenced. It's an excellent initiative, and we are still reviewing and assessing whether or not we can contribute to that as well. And, frankly, Ambassador, we wanted to mention that, Canada will continue to ensure that our mandates that govern the work of the OAS and the language that we spend so much time annually negotiating through resolutions reflects and entrenches the importance of a gender perspective in policies and programming in all the work we do. We believe that's important. It may not seem like a lot, but we are all sitting around the table negotiating these omnibus resolutions with the mandates that govern our work, and Canada will continue to ask that a gender perspective is included wherever we can, because it is that important to us, and we believe to other member states as well, as evidenced by this excellent meeting that you're convening today. And last but not least, we would advocate for using intersectional approaches at the OAS, like Gender-Based Analysis Plus, to support the development of inclusive initiatives. So we encourage the Secretariat to consider the implementation of the GBA Plus approach to programming. So in short, we hope that didn't take up too much time, but we tried to zone in on those 4 questions you asked us. And again, we thank you so much for the opportunity to share and to learn from others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. Your emphasis is noted and it is important. So we thank the delegation of Canada for that intervention. I now recognize the delegation Trinidad and Tobago. And before we bring on Mrs. Lord Lewis, we'll ask Ambassador Phyllis Spencer to take the floor. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And Chair, I take the floor with much greater pleasure on this occasion because this time we've overcome the technological challenge, and so it's my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Marlene Lord Lewis, who is the President of the National Institute of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the institute to which I referred on the 31st of August, and I look forward at some point to joining other member states in pursuing the call made by this delegation to create a network of our institutes. And it's therefore my pleasure now to offer the floor to Mrs. Lord Lewis. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and good afternoon to the meeting. Ambassador, Chair, and Executive Secretary, I want to take the opportunity to congratulate you on this meeting and indicate how excited we are to have been invited to share with you the work that NAHUS has been doing, not only just in women and girls, but in fact, a 36-year-old, we're celebrating our 36th anniversary this year, in 2021. And we wanted to share with you the initiatives that we have been doing with regard to women and girls in science in particular, as well as other initiatives that have involved the regional collaboration. So we will put up our presentation and go through in the context of what the discussion is about this afternoon. We thought what we will do is look at some of the trends with regard to labor statistics under our Central Statistical Office. And our first slide, we're looking at labor force participation rates and unemployment rate. The information is not that different from what we expect, in that males recorded a higher labor force participation than females in all 3 quarters. And you will realize that the 3 quarters are the quarters that would have been influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic. In the second quarter of 2020, the male labor force participation was 64 compared to the females 47.1. So this is just setting the context. In the second quarter of 2020, again, the male unemployment rate increased to 5.1% compared to 3.5% in the fourth quarter of 2019, while females decreased from 5.9 to 5.2%. Our next slide, we look at labor force by industrial group and gender. And the majority of women, you would note, were employed in 3 industrial groups: wholesale and retail trade, restaurants and hotels, 58.6%, community, social and personal services, 52.2%, and financing, insurance, real estate, and business services. Why is this important? It's important because during the pandemic, these are the areas that have been significantly affected in terms of staff reductions or persons who are not able to gain employment. In terms of occupational groups, we looked at the fact that female workers outnumber the males in the following occupational groups: clerks, 80.1%, technicians and associate professionals, 61.2%, professionals, 56.2%, legislators, senior officials and managers, 52.3%, and service workers, 51.5%. So this recognizes the cluster of women by occupational groups. And during the presentations, we heard about empowerment of women. And I have with me this afternoon Ms. Sharon Carmanand and Ms. Luvan Superville, who will share the presentation and look at the academic performance at the tertiary level. Sharon.
Good afternoon, everyone. A review on the academic performance at the tertiary level. The chart shows the academic performance from 3 state institutions, and what we can see is that female graduates outnumber the male graduates. In total, 68% of the graduates were females, while 32% were males. Also, we have at all fields of study, we also saw that the females outnumbered the males in all fields except engineering. And when we look at chart 4, again, the females outnumber the males at all degree levels. So at the first degree, master's and PhD, we also had females outnumbering the males. Our next slide, the map there shows the educational performance by districts, and the areas highlighted in red are the at-risk districts in the country. And we have the northeastern area and followed by the southeastern and Tobago. And these are the areas that score that students attempting 5 CSEC subjects inclusive of mathematics and English, they scored less than 50%. So less than 50% of the students were successful at attaining 5 CSEC subjects, including mathematics and English. Also, the map doesn't show it, but if we further disaggregate that data by gender in each educational district, the males performed lower than the females. So we have at both tertiary and secondary level, the males performing lower than the females.
And we recognize from the work at NEHIS the following are the key challenges and opportunities to improve access of women and populations in vulnerable situations in science, technology, and innovation. Key challenges identified were limited resources and necessary infrastructures to allow them to experience the magic of science. We recognize there's a lack of societal role model scientists that look like them. And the collection of data and data-driven policies, particularly in STEM, were lacking. Inclusive would have been the robust monitoring evaluation frameworks to determine the success of those policies. Opportunities, however, would have been arousing the curiosity through science centers and other informal education programs, mentoring schemes, fully paid internships and scholarship programs, career events, which expose students and promote the discovery of new emerging and non-traditional paths in STEM. Also, an opportunity would be to showcase and highlight Caribbean success stories of women, girls, and vulnerable groups through digital platforms. NEHIS National Science Center aims to advance levels of scientific and technological literacy in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean by presenting knowledge and experiences of science and technology in most palatable forms. It should be noted that our visitor stats show that our female visitorship is almost twice that of males. During the closure of our National Science Center due to the COVID-19 pandemic, NEHIS was also able to pivot its offerings, providing virtual and online science fairs, career events, innovation competition, camps, and clubs. We were also able to continue our quarterly intellectual property clinics where we had IP professionals engage with persons virtually on intellectual property rights for their ideas, products, inventions, and innovations. We continued with our virtual Meet the Entrepreneur series, which provides insight and inspiration into the possibility of designing, creating, innovating, and problem solving through our Fab Lab facilities. Each year, NEHIS will partner with the U.S. Embassy to accept applications for scholarships to attend a National Youth Science Camp in Virginia of the USA. And this year, we had 5 local students attend virtually, all of whom were female. NEHIS promotes the inclusion of women, girls, and vulnerable groups. And this year, under the patronage of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, NEHIS collaborated with UNESCO and celebrated the International Day for Women and Girls in Science virtually. We join the global movement to inspire girls and young women through the annual commemoration of Girls of the International Girls in ICT Day. The NEHIS Teach Me project target audience are students from schools under academic watch, underrepresented and underserved students. And in 2021, we were able to host virtual events for this target audience, such as a National Schools Innovation Competition, STEM clubs, STEM career days with STEM professionals, as well as STEM camps. And under this Teach Me program, we announced a call for STEM professionals who had established careers in STEM, but who were born or who were lived in underserved and underrepresented communities. Those individuals who studied in non-prestigious schools and despite circumstances managed to be successful in their field. Again, showcasing that those who look like them. The NEHIS Teach Me project also had the STEM Professional Day, which showcased their success stories in order to excite students interested in STEM subjects and STEM careers. And the Institute also launched an initiative in addressing and archiving our region's scientific heritage through a series of publications on icons in science, technology, and innovation, and launched a series called Caribbean Women in Science and Their Careers, which was circulated throughout the Caribbean in 2011. It documents and promotes public awareness of the contribution and often pioneering efforts of Caribbean women in various scientific-based and technological disciplines and professions. Therefore, again, showcasing the societal role model that young Caribbean girls can identify with.
So we heard the ambassador mention that in your meeting, there was a discussion around the establishment of a network across the regions of institutions and activities that focus on science, technology, and innovation. NEHIS is well recognized today as the national leader in science, technology, and innovation. What we have, if we're going forward, we must go back a bit to see where we have collaborated with the region and position ourselves really as a possible leader in the region when it comes to science, technology, and innovation. So we do have some, as Bluvan mentioned, we developed icons which are a recognition of the experts who have performed across the region in science, technology, and innovation. We collaborated with Barbados, on the Shell and the German Embassy, the Shell and German Embassy in the development of Deep Sea Wonders, which is again a look at the Caribbean and the maritime industry. And the importance of this is an awareness and a knowledge of what we have in the Caribbean as it relates to STI. In terms of the NEHIS Annual Caribbean Youth Science Forum, this was funded by the various countries in the Caribbean, 14 countries, and this was funded by the countries which sees the involvement of youth, tertiary level youth in the Caribbean to look at projects and come together for the purpose of developing the awareness of science, technology, and innovation. One of the projects that we collaborated with the OAS, in fact, we did collaborate with the OAS on the Icons project, Caribbean Icons, was the Go Creative project. And we wanted to identify that these are some of the collaborations that we've had with the region, and it supports the vision of the group, including the words of the ambassador, that we need to develop or reestablish a network of STI operatives within the Caribbean. Why do we need that? We need to give the Caribbean a chance. We need to give the Caribbean a chance to be competitive with regard to development of 21st century skills. We need to give the Caribbean a chance to look at the fourth industrial revolution that speaks to technology and in terms of future-proofing our workforce. Collaboration within the Caribbean is critical towards that. Our final slide is a slide that speaks to the SciTechnoFest project. And what is SciTechnoFest? Of course, the name is explainable. It's science, technology, knowledge, a festival that focuses on that. And we have had several of these festivals over the years. This 2022 March represents the first virtual SciTechnoFest that we will be undergoing. The background to that, it was first held in 1997, and it has grown into the English-speaking Caribbean's biggest and most spectacular science festival, with an average of over 55,000 visitors over a 21-day period. So when we operated under a face-to-face operation, we would have exhibits and workshops and participation globally at a local location, which is Trinidad and Tobago. In this particular SciTechnoFest, we are now operating under a virtual arrangement, which allows a wider participation. It allows a more cost-effective festival, and it is aimed to promote greater public awareness and understanding, the impact on our everyday life and well-being, and its vital role in promoting economic prosperity, social progress, and environmental sustainability. Why economic prosperity? The festival focuses on attracting entrepreneurs, not just locally, that will come and display their processes, display their products, display how they are working on the green economy or the blue economy across this 5-day period. This is a 5-day period that we're having this year. The festivals over the years, though, have proven to contribute to public knowledge, engagement, and appreciation of STI. Science festivals, such as SDKF, provide an opportunity to celebrate the wonders of STI and bring citizens together to celebrate STI and its importance in socio-economic development. I think this is a very good platform for us to present the SciTechnoFest, and we have heard a lot of presentations from the experts with regard to the role of women and the initiatives that are being developed for women and girls in science. We want to invite all to look at SciTechnoFest 2022 as an opportunity for us to advance the conversation that we are having here as a first step towards showcasing some of the products that have been described and some of the initiatives that have been described towards developing a stronger network of STI across the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Lord Lewis. I'm sorry, the chair is having some technical difficulties, so she's trying to rejoin. And with the permission of member states, I would like to offer the floor to Chile, in absence of the chair. Oh, she's back. Thanks.
Thank you. It's on the delegation of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular, Mrs. Lord Lewis, for her comprehensive presentation. And yes, we will now move to the delegation of Chile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I will try to be as succinct as possible. These days, connectivity and the famous ICTs, information communication technology, are basic to the development of our countries, including the exercise of human rights, the right to health, the right to work, you name it. And in the pandemic, we have understood, have we not, how critical these information and communication technologies are to keep us together, to be able to talk, and look at us working virtually. Yet, astoundingly, there are too many people today who don't have it. And that is why it is absolutely essential to reduce that famous digital gap, to reduce it, to narrow it as best we can. And for years now, Chile has been working on science, technology, entrepreneurship, and other related issues, particularly focused on young girls, adolescents, women, and all those who are in a particular situation of vulnerability and who are, quite frankly, the down and outs of the information technology thus far. We want to generate digital abilities, boost confidence in the ICTs, and more than anything else, to encourage people to take a chance in a manner that will benefit everyone. The technology centers, universities, and including multilateral organizations such as our own, should take a hard look at how the networks that already exist and the data available might give us an idea of where to go from here to promote better social sharing of this and tapping markets, establishing partnerships, and anything that will bring that gap to a narrower level. This is, we believe, an absolute obligation. We have got to work towards a world that will be different from what we know today, whether we do it or not. And what we wish to do is to reduce inequality, the tremendous economic uncertainty that the entire world is going through, let alone this region, is, we believe, an excellent platform on which to work, to assist the most vulnerable. This is what we have done in Chile. We have developed productive technological work and greater participation of women in labor. As to connectivity, in June of 2020 in Chile, we had an enormous level, 19,400,000 and some inhabitants. Of these, 9,000 and some have mobile connectivity, but only 3,800,000 have fixed connectivity at the national level. And so in order to strengthen connectivity in our country, the Chilean Ministry of Communications are working very hard to lay down fiber optics throughout the country. This is a major project, both at the southern tip as well as the rest of the country, so that most of the community can do better. All of this on the basis of information we have. We're seeing that children, adolescents, and women, the people living in rural areas, elder people, and indigenous are particularly in need of help. We have enormous number of public policies to help this, like our 2020 digital agenda, the 2021 digital agenda, the national plan for digital language, and other projects that are in the ministries of women and gender, inter alia. Of course, in such areas as a generation of digital ability and setting up teams that will help various population groups, the Ministry of Communications is particularly engaged. We are deeply grateful to you, Madam Ambassador and Executive Secretary, for bringing this before us today. Could not be more important. And all we need to do is to keep looking at what we can do better at the multilateral era. But bravo and thanks for this.
Of Chile, and now recognize the delegation of Panama.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yet again, the delegation of Panama wishes to express its thanks to you and congratulate you for choosing an issue of such tremendous relevance for us today, particularly on the heels of the negative impact of the pandemic. This is a wonderful platform on which we can look more closely at how we can inch closer to gender parity in every area. We are very impressed by the distinguished panelists that shared their experiences with us, their vast knowledge, and frankly showed us how they are good examples of investment that is lucrative and that works by women for women. These are success stories that cannot be ignored. And I do believe that all of the delegates and speakers who have come before me have recognized as much. We all agree that girls and adolescents must go forward in science and technology. It isn't enough that they be users. It is essential that they be part and parcel, eventually, of the creation and implementation of these modalities. COVID-19 really put us behind the eight ball in many respects, particularly as regards the representation of women in science and technology and investment, and therefore, quite frankly, their increased access to the digital world. We have got to narrow those gaps at every level. Now, we know also, though, that what the pandemic did was to boost the use of digital e-commerce and greater use of the internet, creating new sources of employment, and therefore in a way that might benefit women too. In 2018 in Panama, we carried out the first gender diagnosis on participation of women in science in Panama. Why? Because we wanted to know what was holding women back, where half of the population was hanging back, quite frankly, in that sector. And what we saw was that the typical stereotypes, the gender roles loom large. And these are, like it or not, still obstacles in the development of women in careers that they don't automatically see themselves engaging in. And this, therefore, underscored how absolutely essential it is for all of us in government to recognize it, do something about it. We decided to start with a better integration of girls and young women in the present labor market, and to work against the stereotypes that are blocking women and girls from going into it. And we understand that you have to start early. You have to start very early with little girls, right the way through school and to the adolescent level. Science, technology, innovation, our group, CONACYT, and other groups like academia and the private sector have all come together. And I'm sorry, for lack of time, I could make a long list of the people that have contributed to this. There have been convocations to different groups, robotics, various campaigns, visibilization of scientists who happen to be women, and numbers of other means by which we thought that the awareness would be raised, which is what we wanted. For the sake of time, let me close. We very much recognize the Inter-American Sector of Science and Technology and SETI, the great role they're playing together to boost our participation in this area, and we commit to ensure that Panama will continue to lead in this very important endeavor, particularly for girls and women in a situation of vulnerability in science, technology, and entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank the delegation of Panama for your input. We know that there are no other delegation requesting the floor. So I now wish to propose that CD, that the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development, CD instructs the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development to document and follow up on the collaboration opportunities with the partner institutions identified during the dialogue and in the interventions made by our delegations, by all delegations. Also, two, to call on member states to put forward their offers of cooperation and partnerships to complement the regional catalog of skills building opportunities to address existing gaps and inequalities on innovation, science, technology, and entrepreneurship in the Americas, and academia to support the development of an America's Youth Academy on transformative technologies leading to the 6th REMSET. If there are no objections, it is so decided. So decided. We now move to item 3. For the consideration of the next agenda item, referring to the Development Fund Corporation Fund, I'm pleased to offer the floor to Executive Secretary for Integral Development, Mrs. Kim Osborne. Mrs. Osborne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador, and good afternoon again to distinguished delegates. Chair, in the interest of time, since we're running very tight on time, I will abbreviate my presentation. I believe that conferences was going to load it, but I will begin speaking all the same. Chair, as you know, as member states are aware, the programmatic cycle for the Development Cooperation Fund was approved by the Management Board and for 2021 to 2024. Member states have chosen the area of focus as inclusive resilience for an effective recovery with a focus on science and technology. And so we will continue to work in a cross-cutting manner to effect programs. Programs are being implemented in 4 areas: retooling MSMEs through innovation and technology, innovative reskilling for the tourism sector recovery and regional economies, scientific and technological innovation for resilience building, science for decision making in disaster risk planning. And all of these are areas of critical importance for member states. The amount of funding approved, next slide please, for the, this is the correct one, for the programmatic cycle 2021 to 2024 is 1.7 million, and we know the criteria is here in terms of eligibility for participation and for evaluation of the fund. Next slide. In terms of the countries that are confirmed for participation, remember this is a pay-to-pay fund, and so only those who are up to date with payments can submit projects. And so under item area 1, retooling MSMEs through innovation and technology, we have the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Honduras, Jamaica, Panama, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia. Innovative reskilling for the tourism sector and regional economies, Dominica, Guyana, and Uruguay. Scientific and technological innovation for building resilience, Argentina, Barbados, Costa Rica, and El Salvador. Science for decision making in disaster risk planning, Bahamas, and Peru. And we're still awaiting the confirmation of Nicaragua. And next slide. And just to give an idea to member states of some of the very interesting, innovative programs and projects that member states have put forward in response to COVID. I think what we're seeing coming out from all capitals are very specific initiatives to address very specific needs that are time-bound, that are very targeted in terms of numbers of people that they're trying to reach. For example, in Panama, to improve the capacities of 300 tourism MSMEs, to develop new services, products, innovative processes with innovations, mechanisms, and post-pandemic tools. In Jamaica, 100 MSMEs adopting technological and non-technological tools to improve their competitiveness, market reach, and boost their economies. In St. Kitts Nevis and St. Lucia, really interesting and innovative projects, as in Honduras and the Dominican Republic as well. So what we're seeing is that while we are providing this seed funding within the context of the Development Cooperation Fund, what member states have done and what is encouraged under the fund is to use the seed funding and put it within the national context and to leverage the seed funding with funding that is coming from other national programs. So we're working in a complementary manner rather than the fund simply going alone. So the idea is to augment that which is already being developed in member states and that which we can attract additional partnerships to. And as we speak, the Secretariat will continue to reach out to other partners to see how they can complement the funding that has been given under the fund. Next slide. I won't go through all of the slides, but member states can have an idea of what is taking place in Dominica, Guyana, Uruguay. Again, very specific initiatives with regard to COVID-19 response and recovery. Next slide. So I won't, again, in the interest of time, I won't go through. So if we could just go to the next, simply to say where we are in the process. So next slide. In the process, we're now at the point of signing agreements and for implementation and the submission of the execution plan. Following that, we will have begin implementation, and 3 months following the signing of the agreements, we will expect the monitoring and evaluation plan. That is a very critical step in the process. As you know, we have to do a midterm evaluation. We do regular progress reports, and I'm very pleased to say that member states in the last 2 cycles have really stuck to the M&E plan in providing us updates and letting us know when they're not able to reach targets. So that's a critical piece in the work that we're doing within the context of the OAS, and we thank member states for their participation in the fund. I take this opportunity, Chair, to urge member states who have not contributed or have not been contributing to the fund to please consider contributing to the fund. I think what we're seeing is the high return on your investment. An investment into the fund is not one-to-one, it's one to, in some cases, 50, in some cases 5, in some cases 20. So we really have seen the value of the DCF in helping member states address specific national priorities. And so we want to encourage the participation. We've sent out the pledge letters and sent out the request for contributions. We're happy to provide member states with additional information, but we urge member states to please consider participating in the fund. I have received additional requests from member states, from capitals of several member states, and dare I say large member states, for participation in the fund. And I have had to say, sorry, you did not contribute, and as such, not able to participate. So I think it's critical for us to continue to resource these very essential mechanisms that we have for funding programs and projects within the context of member states and within the region. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Executive Secretary, for that succinct but comprehensive and timely presentation. I now offer the floor to delegations who wish to refer to the program framework for the Development Cooperation Fund Cycle 2021 to 2024, approved by the Management Board of the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation and Development to finance programs within the context of the thematic area, inclusive resilience for an effective recovery with a focus on science and technology. We now offer the floor to the delegation of Canada.
Thank you so much, Chair, and forgive my delegation if we somehow missed this, but could we request the Secretary to please circulate that presentation that Secretary Osborne just made? Thank you so much.
Thank you. We certainly will request the circulation of the presentation. We'll now recognize the delegation of Panama.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will be brief. I want to thank the cooperation team for all of their work. We want to thank Secretary Osborne. They've been working very hard these last few months. since August, when this approach was approved, and now several member states are now being able to go forward and implement this. And I wanted to share this with all member states and their authorities, because today our Vice Chancellor, the Vice Foreign Minister, signed an execution agreement with BPME and the OAS. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that intervention, Panama, and our congratulations on the signing. If there are no other representative who wishes to comment on the programmatic framework for the programming cycle 2021 to 2024 of the Development Cooperation Fund, I propose that we take note of the information shared by the Executive Secretary for Interrural Development. If there are no objections, it is so agreed. I take this opportunity to remind delegations that the contributions to the Development Cooperation Fund is now due. Let me support our Executive Secretary in that call. Please remind your respective authorities. The DCF provides tremendous benefit to us as member states, and we must encourage all member states to make use of and to make their contributions, their voluntary contributions to the fund. Thank you. We now go to the next item on the agenda, refers to a proposed updated model for ministerial and high-level authorities meetings within the context of CD. To present the topic, I am pleased to offer the floor to the interim chair of the Committee on Partnership Development Policies, Ms. Laura Pizarro, alternate representative of Costa Rica. Ms. Pizarro, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Secretary Osborne. It is a pleasure to greet you in my capacity as Interim Chair of the Committee on Partnership for Development Policies on the occasion of presenting this report on the work carried out by the Committee in response to the new format for sectoral meetings at the ministerial level of the Inter-American Council for Integral Development proposed by the Executive Secretary for Integral Development. I'd like to acknowledge the excellent work done by Mr. Jovan Reed, alternate representative of Barbados, whose mission to the OAS concluded in recent days. Thanks to his executive manner of leading the chairmanship of the committee, we now have an agreement on this issue. We wish Mr. Reed every success in his new duties. Madam Chair, on March 17, 2021, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development presented to the committee its evaluation of the current format for CD's ministerial level sectoral meetings. In this regard, allow me to recall that in the context of development, 12 specialized high-level sectoral meetings are held. 9 sectors are developed within the scope of CD. These are labor, education, science and technology, culture, tourism, sustainable development, social development, cooperation, and ports. We also have 3 sectors in which SETI acts as technical secretariat: competitiveness, micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, and energy. The evaluation conducted by SETI identified 3 immediate areas for improvement in the current process for CD ministerial level meetings. 1, increased participation of ministers and/or high authorities, making full use of the potential of the meetings to advance regional sectoral cooperation. And 3, greater alignment of ministerial level meetings with the summits of the Americas, the General Assembly, or other high-level forum in which member states participate. For example,
the United Nations or regional groups like CARICOM or SICA. The committee expressing its agreement with the evaluation undertaken by SETI, set up an informal working group to consider the proposal presented. This working group met on April 15th and July 22nd, 2021. In addition to the exchange of emails among the participating member states in the group to discuss the points and review what was presented. We also had SETI's ongoing cooperation and advice. SETI, in response to the deliberations with the member states, presented the proposed model for updating the format of the ministerial meetings with the following key points. CD's identification and discussion of sectoral priorities and list of potential actions. Engagement of strategic partners from an early stage of the process. The participation of the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation and Development to attract cooperation authorities, and development of the guide for the preparation of the ministerials by the steering committee. Madam Chair, the updated model presents or proposes a sequence of 11 actions aimed at achieving an efficient and integrated process, which are: 1, initiation of the theme selection process with technical discussions, consultations, and input from strategic partners and institutions with similar mandates. 2, approval of the topic by the steering committee composed of the Troika and the chairs or vice chairs of the existing Inter-American committees. 3, presentation of the white paper by the Secretary based on discussions with the steering committee. 4, definition of the list of specific proposals or projects by CD and obtaining the support of member states. 5, identification of the potential for cooperation by the IACD Board of Directors. 6, the Secretariat shares the list of proposals with strategic partners to identify potential opportunities for partnership. 7, presentation of the ministerial agenda by the steering committee. 8, the Secretariat prepares a draft outcome documents for consideration by member state at the virtual preparatory meeting. 9, holding of the ministerial meeting. This would be a 2-day meeting, and it would be in person, where ministers and strategic partners meet to establish contacts and announce offers of cooperation, as well as setting policy. 10, development of the work plan, and 11, implementation of decisions by member states, the Secretariat, member states, and partners. This update seeks to encourage the engagement and participation of member states at the highest level by providing a forum for substantive dialogue among member states that identify regional priorities of interest and opportunities for cooperation, exchange of experiences, and best practices in policy development and implementation. We also want to implement the work plan of the OAS so that states understand what's going on, and we can also be in line with the ministerial meetings. At the meeting that took place on 12 September, the committee agreed to the proposal to update the model that was proposed by SETI to be presented to CD and for its consideration and approval. Chair, on the committee, this is the agreed upon model. This is contained in document CD/CPD Doc 201/21, and the recommendation that it be approved by CD. I would like to add that if this recommendation is adopted, it is necessary to review and update the processes, procedures, and norms in effect to bring them in line with this model. So I would respectfully suggest that SETI be instructed to do this review and that it present its proposals for consideration by member states. Finally, Chair, I suggest that these reviews or revisions be considered by the committee at the latest the fourth quarter of 2022, including for this purpose the observations made by Brazil and Panama, and that these be presented for CD's decision. With that, I conclude my report, Chair, and I thank you for this opportunity. I thank all the colleagues and representatives of member states that participated actively in this process, and Secretary Osborne and her team for their collaboration. Thank you very much, Chair.
For our comprehensive report. I now offer the floor to delegations who wish to comment on this agenda item. There are no representative who wishes to comment on the proposed model for ministerial and high-level authorities meetings on development. I propose that we proceed in approving it as considered and agreed upon by the Committee on Partnerships for Development and contained in document CD/CPD/doc 208/21 revision 1. I further propose that CD instructs the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development to review and revise the corresponding process and procedure to commensurate with the approved new model and to present a proposal for consideration by the Committee on Partnership for Development Policies before submission to CD for approval. CD further instructs that the reviewing of changes and/or actualization required be completed by the 1st 2022. If there are no objections, it is so approved. Congratulations. I know a lot of heavy lifting went into making this change. Congratulations, Madam Secretary and team. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which refers to the mandate entrusted to CD by the General Assembly through Resolution AG/Res 2954 adopted in October 2020 to prepare a draft resolution entitled the Inter-American Business Charter. I invite the chair of the working group to inform us on the work's progress realized to date. The chair of the delegation of Colombia, you have the floor.
Give the floor to Colombia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary Osborne. I apologize for the technical glitches with regard to my sound and the camera, but I think you can now hear me. Chair, thank you very much. The schedule of meetings in order to comply with the mandate of AgRes 2954, the working group for the draft resolution entitled Inter-American Business Charter met on 24 August, also 7, 14, 21, and 27th of September. During these meetings, the working group focused its debate on revising the 8 chapters that make up the operative part, identifying to date provisional agreements in 33 paragraphs, and continuing its debate on 7 paragraphs. And we think we might merge some of these paragraphs. Also, with regard to the draft preambular section, which have 16 paragraphs provisionally agreed to, we are still discussing 8Bs and 2 possible other paragraphs, so that we can have all the language in line between the preambular section and the operative section. We are also immersed in having a comprehensive review of this resolution so that it will be broad and appropriately refer to all issues. This was based on a methodology that nothing is agreed to until everything is agreed to. At the same time, we've tried to be efficient with our use of time. We thank all delegations and through them, their authorities in Capitol, for participating in the negotiations, and also their flexibility and with their very civic-minded discourse. In order to conclude our negotiations, the working group will also be addressing a possible draft resolution with a report. Our next meeting will take place on October the 4th. I want to reiterate to the Executive Secretariat our thanks for its support. This has allowed us to fully discharge our duties at the working group. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. We thank the delegation of Colombia for the report presented. I now offer the floor to delegations who wish to refer to this issue. We now recognize the delegation of Brazil.
Senhora Presidente, muito rapidamente aqui só.
Chair, quickly, we would like to recognize the chair of the working group who has deftly spearheaded our negotiations, and we hope that we will quickly come to a consensus on this important draft resolution and we look forward to supporting this working group. And again, thank you, Colombia, for your stewardship.
I thank the delegation of Brazil for that input, and if there is no other representative wishing to speak, I propose to take note of the information shared by the chair of the CD working group to prepare the draft Inter-American Business Charter on the work that they have been able to carry out to date. There being no objections, it is so agreed. Agreed. Item 4. The next item on the order of business refers to the 15th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism. This 25th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism, scheduled to take place virtually on October 6, 2021. Colleagues, to comply with Article 14 of the Rules of Procedures for Sectoral Ministerial Meetings of CD, we will now proceed with establishing the order of precedence for delegations of member states and permanent observers. Delegations are reminded that, as outlined in Article 2 of the same Rules of Procedure, the principal representative of the delegations that are next in the order of precedence established in Article 14 of these Rules of Procedure shall serve ex officio as vice chairs of the ministerial and or high-level meeting, and shall replace the chair in the event of the latter's absence or impediment. In accordance with Article 14 of the aforementioned rules, the order of precedence of the delegations for each meeting shall be established in alphabetical order in Spanish by the corresponding regular or special meeting of CD, once the first place has been drawn by lot. The order of precedence of the permanent observers shall be established in the same manner. Secretariat, please proceed to draw the first name for member states.
Con mucho gusto, señora presidenta.
It's my pleasure, Chair. Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, I'm sorry, you were on mute.
Could you please repeat?
Trinidad.
Trinidad and Tobago.
Place among member states is Trinidad and Tobago. Please, Secretary, proceed with the draw the first name for permanent representatives. Permanent observers.
France.
First place amongst permanent observers is France. Thank you. Preliminary list of observers and invited guests. The next item refers to the preliminary list of observers and invited guests to the 25th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism. A preliminary list was prepared by the Secretariat and distributed as document CD/Doc 322/21, Revision 1. In compliance with Articles 17 and 18 of the Rules of Procedure for Sectoral Ministerial Meetings of CD, the preliminary list requires the authorization of this meeting. I therefore submit the preliminary list for your consideration. I offer the floor to delegations who wish to refer to document CD/Doc 322/21. If there are no representatives who would like to comment on the preliminary list of observers and invited guests to the 25th Inter-American Congress of Ministers and High-Level Authorities of Tourism as contained in document CD/Doc 322/21, I propose that it be approved and that the Secretariat be instructed to proceed with the corresponding invitations. If there are no objections, it is so approved. Approved. The next Inter-American meeting to refer to during today's meeting is a third specialized CD meeting of high-level authorities of corporation scheduled to take place virtually December 2nd and 3rd, 2021. Colleagues, in preparation for the upcoming meeting of authorities of corporation, the preliminary draft agenda is being considered and developed within the Management Board of the Inter-American Agency for Cooperation and Development. As per Article 8 of the Rules of Procedure for CD sectoral meetings at the ministerial level, the preliminary draft annotated agenda will be prepared by the Technical Secretariat based on the deliberations of the Management Board. Therefore, document CD/Doc 323/21, preliminary draft agenda, is presented today for information purposes. In an effort to secure the highest level of participation from member states and the private sector and other relevant parties at this meeting, the Secretariat has prepared and submitted a preliminary list of observers and special guests for the third specialized CD meeting of high-level authorities of cooperation, as contained in document CD/Doc 325/21. In compliance with Articles 17 and 18 of the Rules of Procedure for sectoral ministerial meetings of CD, the preliminary list requires the authorization of this body. I therefore submit a preliminary list for your consideration. I offer the floor to the delegations who wish to refer to document CD/Doc 325/21. If there is no other representative, or there are no representatives, if there are no representatives who wish to comment on the preliminary list of observers and invited guests to the third specialized CD meeting of high-level authorities of cooperation, as contained in CD/Doc 325/21, I propose that it be approved and that the Secretariat be instructed to proceed with the corresponding invitations. If there are no objections, it is so approved. The last Inter-American CD meeting to be considered today is the 9th meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Education. I'm pleased to offer the floor to representative of Antigua and Barbuda to refer to this item. The delegation of Antigua and Barbuda, you have the floor.
Good. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to you and to distinguished colleagues. Madam Chair, cognizant of the time restraints, I will be as brief as possible. Madam Chair, I wish to refer to the preparation for the holding of the 9th regular meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Education that has been advanced by the members of the Inter-American Committee on Education and its chair, the Honorable Darrell Matthew, Minister of Education of Antigua and Barbuda. Madam Chair, allow me to share with this Council that in the dialogues on public policies and programmatic actions that have taken place in the midst of a global health crisis that involve the massive closures of educational centers, the educational authorities have expressed the commitment that education is a right of all people and an inescapable commitment of the state. In times of necessary and imperative changes, the decisions on our educational systems have had a noticeable impact on their functions, and it is our belief that the future actions that will be agreed during the next meeting to be held by the Inter-American Committee on Education will mark an important course. Madam Chair, it is in this vein that the Secretariat has indicated its desire of having additional time to complete the work prior to the meeting. Works that have been affected by the changes imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic and that have prevented compliance with current regulations for the meetings of the Inter-American Committee. I refer specifically to Article 12 of the Rules of Procedure for the Inter-American Committee of CD, which states that preliminary annotated draft agenda of the meeting must be submitted to CD at least 2 months prior to the meeting, and after the presentation, member states are allowed to 30 days to submit their comments. Therefore, Madam Chair, distinguished representatives, my delegation on behalf of the Chair of the Inter-American Committee on Education requests that the date of the 9th regular meeting be changed so that it can be held virtually on November 18th and 19th, 2021. To change the dates, if the member states so agree, we submit for you for your consideration the draft resolution contained in document CD/Doc 327/21. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We thank the delegation of Antigua and Barbuda for your presentation. Having been made aware of the circumstances that prompted the request to reschedule the 9th meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Education, I submit for your consideration the draft resolution contained in document CD/Doc 327/21 to change the date of the 9th meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Education to now take place virtually on November 18th and 19th, 2021. I offer the floor to delegations who wish to refer to document CD/Doc 327/21. If there are no representative who wishes to comment on the draft resolution as contained in document CD/Doc 327/21, I propose that it be approved and the 9th meeting of the Inter-American Committee on Education be held virtually November 18th and 19th, 2021. If there are no objections, it is so approved. Preliminary draft annotated agenda. As mandated by Article 12 of the Rules of Procedure for the Inter-American Committees of CD, the Secretariat, in coordination with the Inter-American Committee of Education and its chair, have prepared the annotated preliminary draft agenda, distributed as document CD/Doc 326/21. In that regard, as established by the aforementioned rules, member states shall have 30 calendar days from to date to send their observations to the Secretariat so that a new version of the preliminary draft agenda can be prepared and submitted to CD for approval. Therefore, I propose that the deadline for member states to submit their inputs be set for October 28th, 2021. If there are no objections, it is so approved. We now move to item 5, other matters. I now offer the floor to any delegation wishing to bring any other matter to the attention of the Council. Since there are no other matters to consider, I thank you all for your active participation and kind cooperation and your patience. We had a very productive meeting, even though it was a little bit long today. It was most enjoyable, and I thank you all for staying with us and your full participation. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ambassador.
My pleasure.